Guten Yardening, everybody! Today I want to talk to you about a method of growing that we want to suggest that you try this upcoming season. Now we're going to do a couple of these videos and we're going to base them on methods that we've found success, so we want to suggest to you that you maybe give them a try to see if they work for you. Our first method that we're going to talk about in this video is vertical gardening. Now, if you've had any success in the method that we talk about today, go ahead and let us know about it in the comments. And if there are others that you'd like to hear more about, let us know that as well.
Now, one of the things that makes vertical gardening so special to us, and one of the reasons why we like it so much, is of course because we have a very small property to grow on. And because we're trying to grow as much food as possible, we need to make sure we can allocate enough space. And one way to double or triple your space is to grow vertically instead of just growing in a horizontal pattern. If we think about this in terms of just plain square footage on the ground, we're very limited in that way. But if we start talking about growing in that same square footage, but adding now the vertical element, every single layer in terms of the height of a plant is an additional bit of square footage that we couldn't take advantage of before. And there are a lot of creative ways, in my opinion, to do this vertical gardening. And I've seen a lot of really awesome ideas in some of the gardening Facebook groups. And also, I think we've experimented around and had some pretty successful ideas come to fruition as well. It doesn't really take a lot to begin vertical gardening. We've even gone to the dollar store to buy some inexpensive planters there that we can use for vertical gardening. So it's not like it takes a lot to get into vertical gardening. Now, one of the things I want to make very clear about our suggestion today, we're not suggesting anything that we haven't tried before or seen success ourselves personally. So we may mention a few other setups that we've seen, and those are fantastic, but when we talk about what we recommend for vertical gardening, these are from positive experiences that we've had ourselves that we know work, at least for us. We're not going to make recommendations outside of that. So one of the things we've done is an inexpensive way of vertical gardening, and we showed this in an earlier video, but we created from a grow bag from one of our tomato cages, we created a vertical gardening space that has worked really well for us. Growing some of our Swiss chard, growing some of our spinach, etc., even growing some beans. And this setup was not difficult to put together. I mean, it took a little bit of ingenuity, but it wasn't hard. It didn't cost a lot of money. This is just one example of what vertical gardening can really look like on a simple basis. Now, there are plenty of ways to approach vertical gardening, and I'm going to say this before I go into showing you one of our favorites. If you have a vertical gardening setup that works really well for you, that you love and you'd like to share, we definitely want to hear about it in the comments below. In one case, we took our raised bed and we added some trellising to the raised bed in a very easy way, almost like a kind of fencing to our raised bed for our squash. That was cost effective. It added vertical height, and we were able to make sure that our squash stayed up off the ground. This was a simple way to add vertical gardening to what was already used, to a plot that we already used just for potatoes last season. And now we're expanding the use. We're maximizing the growing space. Now, on top of that, we also use some really, I think, non-conventional ways of vertical gardening this season as well. When we grew some of our potatoes in hanging baskets, what that allowed us to do was to take one tiny little footprint, the bottom of the shepherd's hook that we also made ourselves. We took that tiny little footprint, we shot up from there about 3 feet, and we're hanging a basket over an area that's also growing vegetables as well. So now we have multiple layers. We have vertical gardening there in an inexpensive way, and one that we really were able to customize to best fit the specific area that we needed. I mean, that is really a minimal footprint. If you think about a U-post and how much space that takes up in the ground, I mean, that's a pretty good use of vertical gardening. Now, the vertical gardening setup that I want to talk about the most, that I think we've had the most success with this season, is our GreenStalk Vertical Garden. Now, this one honestly is a little bit more expensive than any of the other varieties, than any of the other versions of vertical gardening that we've done. But part of the reason why it's more expensive is the quality of the material in the setup, and quite frankly, it has been one of those setups for us that is just really versatile. It's easy to move around, easy to change up, and we've had a great deal of success with it already. So we've been growing with a GreenStalk now for a full year, and what we've seen is that there's really been little limitation to what we can grow in it vertically. We've grown potatoes in it as a starter crop. That was one of our experiments, growing potatoes in a vertical setup. So if you're somebody who's interested in growing potatoes, something that you've wanted to try, but you don't have a ton of space, this is an option that worked really nicely for us. And I think it opens up a pretty good setup for you if you have, again, that small growing area. Remember, the footprint of something like this, I mean, vertical gardening, that footprint should be smaller anyway, but the footprint of this vertical garden in particular, of this GreenStalk, is only about 1.5 square feet. It's not a massive footprint. And so we were able to grow some red, white, and blue potatoes in this vertically in a space that was just on our patio. And immediately after using this GreenStalk for our setup, we were able to transition over to some of our fall vegetables as well. Some of our kales, our collard greens in this vertical setup, and it was very simple, and we didn't take up a lot of space. So now we're sitting there with the opportunity to harvest what we need for a salad or a green smoothie in a space that could be right outside of our door. Again, the beauty of vertical gardening. You can place it, in this case with the GreenStalk, you can place it anywhere you want as long as there's appropriate amount of sun, and it's ease of access, minimal space, and we're taking advantage of the height that we have outside. If you've seen some of our earlier videos from the winter, we're also attempting to grow sweet potatoes in the GreenStalk. We're trying to push the limits. We want to see exactly what we can do with this setup. Now, if you're interested, there is a $10 coupon in the description. All you have to do is go to GreenStalk, place your order, and then there's a code there, code Guten, that you can use to get $10 off your order of $75 or more. So that might be something valuable to you as well. Now, we also have something planned for these steel tomato cages, these large 4-foot tomato cages for next season, but I'm not going to share too much on that. Just know that we have some different vertical garden plans for that as well. And to be quite honest, I'm really excited to show you what that's going to look like, but you have to wait a little bit longer.
Well, I think you can see that the potential that comes with vertical gardening, especially for improving the amount that you can grow in a very limited space, is really outstanding. It's something that we want to take full advantage of as often as possible, and we hope that you'll consider doing the same. Now listen, if you enjoyed this video today, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.